Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft is up for your viewing pleasure. Colorful metaphoric pleasure as well, if you don't like where he's placing people over on CBSSports.com. Ryan has the Bears staying where they are, taking Will Anderson with that first overall pick. Alabama quarterback Bryce Young goes 2 to the Texans. The first of 4 quarterbacks taken inside the top 10. C.J. Stroud goes to the Colts, Levis to the Raiders, Anthony Richardson to the Panthers, and you see Jordan Addison highlighted there at number 10. He is the top wide receiver off the board. Let's say happy Friday to Ryan and pick his brain about the latest mock and these skill position guys. That's where we're going to focus. But first, Ryan, I want to ask you, how important are player comps for you in terms of relating a player's skill set to the audience?
Right. It's important to relate those skill sets to the audience, but it also gives you a framework as the evaluator, if you will, as a starting point. And, you know, my guy Rick Spielman, we do the With the First Pick podcast, he's big on comps. He's big on hating the comps that I usually make. So, you know, it's a tough road to hoe at times, but it gives you a starting point, right? It gives you an idea, if you're a fan not familiar with a player that your team's just drafted, best case scenario, this is what we can hopefully expect 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and that's where that's the jumping off point for the conversation.
All right, so let's get into some player comps here. Who do you have as a good player comp for Jordan Addison, who we saw sitting at number 10 in your latest mock?
Jordan Addison reminds me a little bit of Jalen Waddle. Now, Jordan Addison's going to be a little bigger. He'll probably come in at about 5'11", 175. Jalen was 5'9", 180 of the combine. Jordan Addison is an absolute burner. We know Jalen can run too. He didn't run to the combine, but he has 4.4 speed at worst. And we see similar traits from Jordan Addison, who can line up anywhere, has returnability like Jalen Waddle, and is an absolute home run hitter from any one place on the field. Can score from all 3 levels, and that's why I like him a lot compared to Jordan Addison, to Jalen Waddle. And if you're wondering, Jeremy, because I know you are, Rick Spielman's comp for Jordan Addison, Devonta Smith.
Okay, and we saw on the board there, we brought that board in, but the skill position players that we're focusing on that you have going in the first 31 picks of that first round. So we're talking wide receivers and running backs. So let's go to TCU's Quentin Johnston. The guy is 6'4", 215 pounds, racked up over 1,000 yards in 2022. So who does he remind you of?
Right, a completely different body type than the Jordan Addison we were just talking about. Huge catch radius, can get down the field, and this is a best-case scenario comp and one that will probably frustrate some people because it's not perfect, but it's close because you mentioned the 6'4" frame. Andre Johnson, old school out of the U, drafted 3rd overall in the first round by the Texans. Andre was only 6'2", but he played like he was about 6'8", measured at 230 at his combine. Quentin's not quite that heavy, but you can see they can both make contested catches. They both win consistently down the field. Huge catch radiuses, high point catch guys, all the little buzzwords we like to use when talking about these big wide receivers. And I think if Quentin Johnston hits his ceiling, we could see Andre Johnson type production, but that's a huge if. Quentin Johnston isn't going to go 3rd overall, but he'll be most likely in the top half of the first round when it's all said and done.
Well, yeah, when you look at that size, as you mentioned, 6'4", 215, that is a big boy who's going to command the ball when he gets onto the field. Ohio State's Jackson Smith-Njigba is the next guy we want to talk about. A little shorter, a little smaller than Johnston. Who's his player comp?
And we need to see how fast he is, Jeremy. And one of the things about the draft process, it's what have you done for me lately is typically the mantra. And that's because Jackson Smith-Njigba didn't play last year. He had a hamstring injury, only played in 3 games, only had 5 catches. His comp for me right now, and this may change, but Robert Woods, the former second-round pick out of USC, drafted by the Bills back in 2013, still in the league, still producing at a high level, still a really, really good football player. Is Jackson Smith-Njigba a legit number 1 receiver? That I'm not sure about. But here's the thing. We talked to Garrett Wilson last week in Phoenix, and he said on the 2021 Ohio State roster that included Garrett, that included Chris Olave, that included some guy named Marvin Harrison Jr., who's probably going to have a pretty good career too. Jackson Smith-Njigba was the best of the bunch. He's undersized, as you mentioned. I want to see what he runs at the combine in a few weeks, and if he hits the sub 4.5, then we maybe change that comp a little bit, but there's nothing wrong with being the next Robert Woods.
And the stats certainly back up what Wilson was saying. I mean, he averaged over 4 yards per route run, which is better than Wilson and Olave, both of whom were top 11 picks a year ago. Texas running back Bijan Robinson next forced over 100 missed tackles in 2022. He is one of the most elusive backs in the history in terms of his forced tackles, missed tackles rate. What about Robinson's NFL equivalent at this point?
So Bijan forced 100 missed tackles, Jeremy. Another 250 of guys, you said, I'm not even going to try to tackle this guy because I'm going to get hurt if I do that. And Bijan, knowing his size, knowing his speed, he might run sub 4.5, which would certainly get your attention as a running back. He has a lot of Saquon Barkley in his game. And when you think about Saquon Barkley, at least when I do, I don't think of him being a tall running back. But he measures 6 feet, 233 at his combine. And he also ran sub 4.5. So we know he can move. We see the same thing from Bijan Robinson week in and week out in Texas. He can catch the ball coming out of the backfield like Saquon can, and he's as close to Saquon as we've seen among the running backs, and that includes a great group a few years ago that started with Jonathan Taylor. So there's a great opportunity for Bijan Robinson to be a first-round pick. He's probably one of the 10 best players in this draft, Jeremy, but the running back position being what it is, he may slip to the bottom half of the first round.
Certainly going to a lot of potential there for him. Lastly, you have running back Jamir Gibbs going to the Saints. So I guess perhaps apropos that his player comp is a current Saints player for you?
Yeah, you got it. Alvin Kamara, a third-round pick out of Tennessee back in 2017. Alvin Kamara is a little bigger when he came out of school than Jamir Gibbs is, the Alabama star who transferred from Georgia Tech last year. A lot of similarities otherwise in their game. He will make guys miss in open space. He will make guys miss in small areas, and then he will outrun those guys to the end zone. He is a fantastic asset as a receiver. We saw that regularly during the fall for Alabama, and he has that type of game-breaking ability that we see from Alvin Kamara. He will run through arm tackles. He's just probably about 10 pounds lighter than what Kamara is now, probably about 7 or 8 pounds lighter than Kamara's playing weight in college. But again, a special talent. We'll see if he goes to the first round. I like him a lot as a first-round player, but again, the running backs get pushed down, and usually they'll be late first, early second. That'll be the range for them, and that's when we can start to see Bijan Robinson and Jamir Gibbs go off the board.
And if Gibbs does end up going to the Saints, I mean, there is questions right now about their running back situation heading into next season. So a good opportunity potentially for him. Of course, he's one of the best receiving backs in the class. 25 receptions of 15 or more yards in each of the past 3 seasons. He is CBS Sports draft expert Ryan Wilson going over his latest mock draft in terms of the skill position players. It's up for your viewing pleasure over on CBSSports.com. For more on Ryan's latest mock and to listen to Ryan get mocked, be sure you're listening to the With the First Pick podcast that he does alongside former general manager Rick Spielman. They go over prospects, scouting, and profiles, and Rick constantly tells Ryan how wrong he is, but it's in an entertaining and highly informative way. Download and follow With the First Pick wherever you get your podcast audio.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.